Hello and welcome to Gettysburg College's session on financial aid and merit scholarships. I'm Darryl Jones and I am a Senior Associate Director of Admission, Coordinator for Multicultural Admission, and Intercollegiate Athletics Liaison at Gettysburg College. I have my colleague Lindsey Weibley with me, and we're excited to talk to you about something that we know is on everyone's mind. We know that when you choose colleges and universities, you choose them for academic programs, for extracurricular programs, and all sorts of other things. But what is also just as important is how you plan to finance the 4 years of your college education. So when we talk to you today, we're going to explain all the insider terms that we use in higher education and make this process of financing college a little less stressful. So thank you again for joining us. And now here's Lindsey Weibley. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I am Lindsey Weibley, as Darryl said, and I am part of the financial aid office here at Gettysburg College. And the aid that we have available is the academic merit scholarships, and these are awarded through the admissions review process. But what my office, the financial aid office, handles are the need-based financial aids. These can include Gettysburg College grants, as well as state and federal grant funds, and student loans, federal work study. And to know if you are eligible or to receive these funds, you must apply. And at Gettysburg College, we have two applications. They are the FAFSA and the CSS profile. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. And this is required by most colleges and will be required every year that you are interested in applying for financial aid, for federal financial aid. One part of the FAFSA that you may find interesting is the IRS data retrieval tool. The data retrieval tool helps to bring in your IRS information and fills in the FAFSA for you. We recommend it if you're eligible to use this tool because it can help you make sure that your information is accurate, and it lessens the chance that you may have a typo. And also it may mean that you might not have to supply as much documents later down the road. For this year, the tax information that you'll be using is the 2019 tax year. Also, if you have siblings or multiple students who are in college, make sure that a FAFSA is completed for each child. And if you've already completed it and submitted it and didn't put Gettysburg on, that's all right. You can log in and add Gettysburg and resubmit the FAFSA at any point. I do want to let you know, though, that the FAFSA limits how many schools you can have on your FAFSA, and there's only 10 at a time. My recommendation for you is that if you have multiple schools and you've already had that 10 limit, reach out to some of those schools and you can make sure that they have received it. And after you receive confirmation that they have your FAFSA, you can add Gettysburg College right in. The other application that we have is the CSS profile. The CSS profile is a little bit more detailed. And sometimes there's some parents or students who grumble a little bit more about this one, but it's very helpful for financial aid offices because it looks at more than just the 2019 tax year that the FAFSA does. The CSS profile is required by Gettysburg College and other highly selective colleges. The tax information that it requests is also the 2019 tax information, but it goes a little bit further and asks you for general information about 2020 and 2021. That information is very helpful to us because oftentimes families aren't really at the same spot they were 2 years ago. So this allows us to see where you are now rather than just looking at 1 year. And my favorite part of the CSS profile is the free text field. This is at the end, and it allows you to write your special circumstances. Know that we read each one of those, and it's important for you to let us know what you would like us to consider when you're applying for financial aid. One of the questions I get the most in our financial aid office is, how is need-based financial aid determined? Well, here's what counts. First, income, then the assets and investments, and also number in household and number in undergraduate study for that year. What doesn't count is retirement savings, but no, they must be already in a formal retirement fund. And also, home equity in a primary home does not count. You do not need to put your own home that you live in on the FAFSA. Some tips that I'd like to share with you include: use an email address which you check frequently. This is really important because that email address that you put on the FAFSA is how we email you and connect to you. So that's the email address that we'll use. I also recommend that if you have like a school address that may expire, I wouldn't use that. Use one that you have and plan on using. Also, double check the information before submitting. An extra digit can make a huge difference. And sometimes I've seen where they tell you not to put decimal points and somebody has, and they just add those numbers onto the final number, and it becomes much more than what you would want to put on your application. So make sure that you're paying attention to those details. Also, confirm birthdays and social security numbers. Those are extremely important. If you accidentally put in the wrong one, it can be challenging and somewhat difficult to change the FAFSA. Not impossible, just challenging. And it's actually a common problem, especially with twins or siblings, so just make sure those are correct. Also, when you're filling out these forms, make sure to confirm the current value of your checking, savings, and investment accounts. And the last thing I have here is the net price calculator. This isn't a required application by any means. It is just a tool for our families to be able to go out and put in their financial information and see what aid they may be eligible for. This isn't an end-all estimate, but it's a great place to start. In fact, if you include your student's name or your name, then you can give us a call and we can pull that up and we can talk to you about your results and see how accurate they may be for you. Also on the net price calculator is a results page. It has an option to recalculate with merit scholarship, and it allows you to learn a little bit more about our scholarships. And then when you select it, you can see how our scholarships play with their different grants. And lastly, I'm going to go over some special circumstances. The first one is about divorced and separated parents. We get that one a lot. At Gettysburg College, we only want the forms to be completed by the custodial parent and step-parent if they are remarried. There is no need to provide us with the non-custodial parents. We don't need a non-custodial waiver here at Gettysburg. Custodial can be confusing and difficult to identify, but the very first thing to think about is which parent has the student lived with the most the previous 12 months of the date they are submitting the FAFSA. If the student lives with the parents exactly half, then there are some other things that we can consider. What I would do in that case is call our office and we would chat with you and talk about your personal situation and help you decide who your custodial parent should be. Other special circumstances include recent job loss or significant medical expenses, and that is happening a lot right now, especially with COVID. The FAFSA is looking at 2019, so there's been a lot of change for a lot of our families. The CSS profile is a wonderful place for you to write all that information so we can consider it. And the last special circumstance that I'm going to go over is an IRA rollover for the 2019 tax year. This is specific for those who may have used the data retrieval tool, the IRS data retrieval tool. The 2019 data retrieval tool doesn't always pull the rollover correctly. It does. A rollover does not need to be reported on the FAFSA. So if you use the data retrieval tool, that's fine. Just call our office, let us know so we can make sure that that number isn't being reflected on your financial aid application. And I just want to remind you that you can ask as many questions as you like. We will address them. We're going to address them at the end, but please do. We encourage lots of questions because financial aid can be so different and there's so much to it. So please do ask some questions. And you can write them in and we'll make sure to address them. Now I'd like to turn it over to Darryl and he can talk a little bit more about the merit side of things.
Thank you so much, Lindsey, and thank you for being so thorough with how you explain this process that can be a little daunting. One of the things I'd like to boast about, though, for my colleagues in financial aid is this. They split by alphabet. So you have a counselor who's going to work with you from now until you graduate from Gettysburg College without having to re-explain your circumstance. So whether you are a junior just starting out or a senior, what is great about our financial aid counselors is that they follow you, they work with you, and they make it a very human process. So I want to talk about merit scholarships, but I'll also talk a little bit about how the financial aid process works with merit scholarships and also the admissions process. Oftentimes when people ask about merit, it can be confusing. There are colleges and universities that automatically give merit even if you just apply. There are some that require you to have certain criteria that you need to reach. And then some others, like Gettysburg Colleges, that are all based on the competition that exists in the applicant pool. One general rule of thumb to think about is simply this. The higher the scholarship amount, certainly the more stringent or high the credentials have to be. So I will talk a little bit about what our scholarships are for academic merit, and then explain briefly what it means to get them and retain them. The general rule of thumb at Gettysburg College is simply this. If you get through Gettysburg College's 4 years with a 3.0, even though in the first year it's usually 2.75, you will keep your scholarship. And we've done the research. We know that if you come in with a merit scholarship, it is likely you're going to keep it all 4 years because we're really careful about saying this person qualified for it and will keep it. So I will start with the Founders Scholarship. The Founders Scholarship, the 1832 Founders Scholarship is the full name, is based on leadership. Leadership. It's not leadership by position or title solely, it's leadership by your actions. So we are able to designate that because people might do something for a neighbor. People might do something at their part-time job during the year. People might be Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or be involved with a religious activity, but we know leadership in action when we see it. So there is no supplement required. It is merely we have to notice leadership that is a part of your life in high school. I love designating those because it really allows us to see who you are and what you're about as a human being outside of the classroom. The David Wills Scholarship is the next one up, and we will tell you a little bit who David Wills is. David Wills is actually the Gettysburg graduate who invited Abraham Lincoln to give those famous words called the Gettysburg Address. So Abraham Lincoln actually stayed overnight at the home of David Wills right in the center of Gettysburg. And without David Wills and without Gettysburg College, really there would be no Gettysburg Address. So with the David Wills, what we're looking for there are top students. People whose curricular choices are strong, so based on the context of your school, we're looking to see if there are honors or advanced placement or international baccalaureate or dual enrollment or some other sort of high-level courses that are beyond basic college preparatory work. We like to see people getting lots of A's at Gettysburg College because that's typically who applies. So a few B's here and there, a few B pluses, that's perfectly fine because we understand that not everybody's going to get straight A's in every single course, and not every course is going to be a strength of yours. With the Presidential Scholarship, which is the next highest, now we're looking for people who, if their schools would rank, they'd be in the top 10 or 15% of their schools, or they'd be in the top 20%, but with an ultra rigorous curriculum. We're looking to see 4-year sustained excellence there. We're looking to see how you've applied yourself from the 9th grade straight through to the senior year. So if you are not a senior right now, please make sure that at the end of this year, you work with your counselor and your family to sign up for the most rigorous courses that you can successfully manage. And I want to emphasize, it's not a race to take a high number of AP or other advanced courses. It is, again, about successfully managing that rigor. With the Lincoln Scholarship, that is one in which both rigor is at its highest and performance is at its best. Again, we do realize that many colleges are maybe looking at rank as an issue, but we know that most high schools don't offer class rank. We do know, based on our long history of working with many schools across the nation and around the world, that if you are doing ultra well in a tough curriculum, you're going to be someone who, if the school would rank, would maybe be in the top 5% of your class or something close. So the Abraham Lincoln Scholarship is about understanding that rigor and excellence have to be a hallmark of your academic career throughout. None of those 4 require any sort of supplement. None of those 4 require you to do anything extra. So while we do, as a part of the admissions process, encourage you to certainly take advantage of our many virtual visit opportunities with us through interviews, with us through information sessions, through connections with a faculty member or student, the fact is, the strength of your curriculum and strength of performance is what matters. The one that does require a small supplement that basically will allow you to tell us how you've left a legacy is the Eisenhower Scholarship. But here is what's great about Gettysburg College. We have been test optional for over a decade, so we don't need your testing for any of these. And we do know that nowadays many colleges and universities have become test optional, at least for this year and next. Those places may have some learning to do, but Gettysburg College is accustomed to recognizing excellence, and here's how I'd like for you to see it. School is 9 months per year. Testing is 1 day. So if you are excellent over 180 days, we know that diligence, attitude, excellence, consistency, the way you interact with your teachers and add value to the classroom discourse, that is measured over 180 days and not just on a standardized test. If you need to know our averages from last year, the average on the ACT was a 30, and the precise average on the SAT was a 1343, although we do realize you can't get that exact score. So understand this. When we're making these decisions on merit, yes, they are driven by academic excellence, but they're also driven by leadership. They're also driven by how you've managed circumstances. They're also driven by how we use what in higher education is called a holistic approach toward application review. Holistic. It means we look at everything about you to determine who you are and whether or not you're admitted. And then the better you are doing versus the regular excellent student that Gettysburg gets, the more likely you are to receive merit. So while it may be frustrating that we can't give you an exact set of criteria that says you must get merit if you achieve these, what we do know is that we read every word on every page, and each application has every word on every page read by at least 2 different people. Beyond that, we do have a Sunderman Conservatory of Music that makes us rare in the liberal arts and sciences realm. And those talented students who plan to major or minor in one of our great music majors can qualify for merit based on being excellent musicians who are also pursuing excellence in music through our academic programs. You can see that we have a few different levels there, but what we want that to be certainly is you will audition, you will connect with our conservatory liaison, my colleague Mary Smith, and those folks will tell you whether or not you're eligible for merit, again, based on how you compete with the remainder of those who apply. The last scholarship I'll talk about is the STEM Scholars Program, and that is our way of enhancing the world's STEM followers: science, technology, engineering, math. We include psychology. But that is for students whose parents may not have gone to college, or students whose very background makes them underrepresented in some way in highly selective higher education. So when you think about merit, here's what I want you to know. You don't get merit by just showing up. You don't get merit just by being accepted. You get merit because you earn it. So if you are not a senior, work hard, be excellent at everything you do, and stay balanced. If you are a senior, make sure that you are applying yourself through to the end. Because with Gettysburg College, it's not just about the junior year being the final year that we see in its entirety. It's about being excellent in the senior year and understanding the fact that that year is the bridge between high school and college. And certainly at any highly selective college or university, people will tell you that you are important because you're going to be successful. We recognize the ultimate success by giving you access to merit. When you think about our deadlines, those are pretty simple, and these are for admissions and financial aid. Early decision round 1 has a deadline of November 15th every year. Early decision round 2 has a deadline of January 15th, and with both of those, we actually notify you of your decision and your financial aid or merit scholarships at exactly the same time, and we do it electronically. With regular decision, which also shares the deadline of January 15th, we go through an intensive committee review process and usually can end that literally within 2 months of that January 15th deadline. So those applying by January 15th will certainly plan to hear from us by the middle of March. So here's what I know. The same care with which our financial aid staff works with you individually to help you to find a way to afford an excellent education. From the net price calculator to the follow-up with that net price calculator to actually applying for aid and if you qualify, receiving it, to our admissions staff who is able to say through an intensive committee review and careful committee review that we know what excellence is when we see it. And again, we can do it without having standardized testing because we know that consistency matters. Our favorite part of our job is to admit you and also make it affordable for you to be with us. So as you continue with this process, no matter what year you are, ask questions, contact us, keep it human by allowing the human beings who are working with you to do our best work with you. I would like to thank you for joining us, and certainly you can feel free to contact either Lindsey or myself, but I want to remind you to please ask your questions, and we will repeat the questions to the audience and then give you answers. But you all will get through this because A, your high school counselors will help you, and B, the professionals at Gettysburg College will work with you to make sure you get through this process and get through it successfully. Lindsey, I have one question for you that I'd like to ask, and it's about this 4-year process. You know, right now we're dealing with a COVID situation, and with the pandemic, I do know that several parents, several families have had their incomes changed. So yes, it's important to know how to get enough aid to be in Gettysburg College the first year. But how did the financial aid office handle the fact, as you mentioned, that so many people had employment changes or furloughs or layoffs or maybe unfortunately lost jobs? What was the financial aid staff at Gettysburg College able to do to accommodate that?
So we have and have always had a special change in circumstances form in which families can fill out, and it allows them to give us that information. But we will also listen to you. You can call in and we'll listen to what changes have happened. We do take them into consideration, but there's a special change in finances form available on our website. That is not needed for the first year applying because the CSS profile has that free text field, and you can write your anticipated aid. But if you already filled out the CSS and didn't do that, certainly the form is available for you to fill out as well. We're here to listen to you. So even if you can't find the form, you can come give us a call. We certainly will take that into consideration because there has been a lot of change, and we do want you to know that we are trying to help out the best we can to make this affordable for you.
Thank you, Lindsey. And another question for you, given that people are finding out that it's difficult to reach people nowadays. Certainly some students are remote, some people are hybrid. How can people reach the financial aid staff during this time?
So while our financial aid staff, most of us are working from home, you are able to reach us using our phone numbers. We all can be reached there. But if you want to see our lovely faces, and we often like to see yours, you can call or email and set up a Zoom. We definitely hold meetings with families on Zoom daily. So just you can schedule one with your counselor at your convenience, and we would love to talk with you.
Thank you. We had a few questions here. You know, there are questions about whether or not there are scholarship opportunities for single parents, things of that sort. One of the things I'll say, and I'd like for you to chime in on this, Lindsey, is that we don't do special scholarships for single parents, but as you remember from Lindsey's conversation, we're one of the very few places actually in the nation that doesn't require the non-custodial parent to fill in things. So Lindsey, could you again repeat what you talked about a little earlier with how we remove that barrier to access for people?
So we only consider that custodial parent information. So in a way, we are considering that single parent because we're only taking their financial aid or financial information into consideration. So when they're receiving the need-based, oftentimes our single parents tend to have more need, and so we are able to help them in that way by not considering any additional non-custodial parent information.
Thank you. And we had a great question, even though averages don't really tell the entire story. But on average, how much aid do we give to students, given that we only have 2,600? I mean, what do we do budgetarily for families?
So I don't have the breakdown available, but I can say that in the 2019-2020 academic year, we gave out $72 million worth of scholarships and need-based grant, and this benefited over 65% of the student body. So it's a large amount that we are providing to our families.
And yet another question. So this is a question that is a pretty precise one, but if a student has savings, how much of a percentage of that are you counting on them using to help finance their education, Lindsey?
So that is considered as part of the FAFSA when they calculate the expected family contribution, which is a number that need-based aid is based upon. Savings in a student's name is counted upon. I do want families to know, although I don't have that percentage in front of me, I do want families to know that it's not a large percentage. If you have savings, that is wonderful, and it's going to help you support your college. It is a great idea to save. It doesn't hurt you enough that saving was a bad idea. It's definitely, we encourage savings, but it is taken into consideration slightly in the FAFSA.
Thank you, Lindsey. And we had another question on what the notification date is for early decisions. So again, both early decision round 1 and round 2 have respective deadlines of November 15th and January 15th. And literally our notification plan is to notify you within 1 month of when we receive your application. So as long as your application is complete, if you are admitted and you are designated either as a scholarship awardee or you have a designated level of need, we will notify you in your portal electronically. So there is no delay between when you're admitted and when you receive aid. I do know that in many cases, and Lindsey, you may know more than I do, that some colleges might admit a student in November or December for early decision, but then not notify them of aid until sometime in March, which I will just say is interesting. It's an interesting way of doing things. So what we want to do is make sure you have all the information to make a great decision. We put it in your hands, and that way you can contact us at whatever time you like. We have a few more great questions that are down here, so pardon me, folks, while I take a look. But how many merit scholarships are awarded per year, and is there a set number? Well, this is the frustrating number that people get with higher education. It depends. So as an example, for that Eisenhower scholarship, that is the absolute top scholarship that we give. So there aren't going to be that many, and we're not going to choose that many because those students are literally the very, very best, smallest percent in the entire pool. What I love, though, is that some years we might have a lot more people who qualify for that Founders Scholarship. They may be students who are good at, again, helping other people without having a position. They may be among the best collaborators in their schools. They may quietly set examples. They may be mentors for younger people. So depending on the year and depending on the substance that exists as a part of your file, something in your essay, your activities resume, which we know this year has been disrupted and continues to be, that can tell us whether or not you are a Founders Scholarship. But for the others that are higher level, again, excellence is excellence, and we know excellence when we see it. So the thing that I will tell you is not to worry about how many other people might or might not get a merit scholarship. What I want you to do is to continue to be excellent for yourself so that you have a chance at receiving merit. We have a number of other great questions, but Lindsey, one of the things I'd like for you to do, if you could please, is give a little advice to families on how they should discuss this whole idea of affordability. How should families manage that conversation?
Well, I believe that families should, be willing to share their stories and be willing to know that we're here to help. So my suggestion is to make that first call, reach out to your counselor. Like Darryl said, we have such a supporting group of counselors in our office, and you're assigned to one already. They're by alphabet. So be willing to make those calls. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer those questions that you may have about filling out the FAFSA, or I've had a really tough time, and that's what our office is trained to do. We're there to listen, and then we're going to help you find ways. I did notice a question down here, Darryl, that mentioned if we meet 100% of demonstrated need. That's an excellent question. Gettysburg College does not meet 100% need, but we do have very competitive packages, and we do have the ability for you to have an open dialogue with us about what can make Gettysburg College affordable. And it doesn't necessarily mean we'll meet that, but we will work with you to make it affordable.
And there was another question about early decision. What's the difference between early decision 1 and 2? And honestly, it's merely timing. Early decision round 1, again, has a deadline of November 15th and a notification of mid-December. Early decision round 2 has a deadline of January 15th, which is shared by our regular deadline. Except with regular decision, again, you're notified 2 months. And with early decision, you're notified within a month. There was another question, Lindsey, about international financial aid. So if you could talk briefly about the international student financial aid application and how that works for families, that would be great. Thank you.
That's excellent. Yes, on our website, we have a specific link that will give you all the information on international applications. So for our financial aid award for those students who aren't citizens or international students, we have 2 forms that we request. You do not need to complete you wouldn't complete the FAFSA or the CSS profile for Gettysburg. For our international students, we have the International Student Financial Aid application and the Certification of Finances form. So both of those forms are located on our website under Applying for Financial Aid, and then under that on the left-hand side is International Students. You can find those forms, you can fill them in. They're PDF, but you can fill them in and then submit them to the admissions office or the financial aid office as part of your application.
More great questions. These questions are fantastic. So another one is, if you have some special circumstances that may be because of COVID or some other set of circumstances, and you are receiving some sort of assistance, whether it's public or private, does that affect financial aid packaging?
So let's say that we have outside scholarships that a student is receiving. We have to follow a certain amount of aid that we can provide, and that is federally regulated. But we will do our very best to allow the students to receive as much gift aid as possible. The first things we would start to consider taking off the aid if someone were to receive just this ginormous amount of aid, we would start taking off something like the federal work study. One reason is that our federal work study, you can work on campus with or without the federal work study. So that's one area. And then we would look at loans. And then if this amount of aid was so much, then eventually the grant could be affected. I do want to say that when it comes to merit and need-based aid, we do not stack our aid on top of each other. So for example, if a student receives both merit and need-based, they're going to receive the amount, if the need-based is higher than the merit, they're going to receive the amount that they would total need-based. It's like if they had a $30,000, if it was $30,000 in need-based and 10,000, we'll say 20,000, they got the 20,000 Founder Scholarship. So they would receive still the 30,000. 20 of that would be in the Founders and 10 of that would be in the merit. Now, if they had a need base of 10,000 and they received a presidential scholarship of 30,000, they're going to get the full 30,000. But I just want to make sure families know that the merit and the need base do not stack upon each other.
And there was another question about how we work with permanent residents. So basically what I'll tell you is that if you're a permanent resident of the United States, you are aided the same way as a United States citizen. Lindsey, any elaboration on that one?
No, I do not have any additional. Thank you, Darryl.
All right, sure. Again, more great questions here. There was a question again about early decision and more to do with how we aid people. There was a question about whether or not family contribution affects admission. So here's what I'll tell you. There are just a couple of colleges and universities in the nation that can afford to be totally need blind. And by need blind, that means they don't pay attention to who you are and how much money you have at all. And those places are extremely wealthy. Most of the rest of the colleges and universities in the United States do consider need for a part of their review process. But what I tell people as a way to get around that is simply this. Understand what it means to be a competitive applicant at any college or university, and then be one of those people that the colleges wants by being great. You should all have a range of colleges that you love with maybe some varying degrees of selectivity, but again, places that you love, because selectivity does not dictate excellence in education. It just tells you how many people are denied admission. And so I will make the reference this way. You don't evaluate a hospital by how many patients it doesn't accept. You don't evaluate towns by looking at crime and seeing how many crimes are not prosecuted. So don't look at colleges by saying, well, that place rejects 94% of its applicants. It must be amazing. Evaluate it by what happens there. Evaluate it by whether or not you feel comfortable. Evaluate it by whether or not it's going to be a 4-year financial fit. So I'll give you an example. Many people will look at colleges and look at the first year and say, I have a good enough financial aid package that I can afford to go there. But if the college or university doesn't guarantee housing all 4 years, where do you come up with that security deposit? Where do you come up with rent? Where do you come up with money for groceries and utilities and your internet access? So even looking at a place like Gettysburg College that guarantees housing all 4 years keeps more money in your pocket. Or maybe this is about living a full life on campus. Many colleges and universities like to boast about off-campus study, study abroad, internships, immersion trips for community service, and other things. Well, if those come at a significant additional cost that is not covered in financial aid, then it's not going to help you. At Gettysburg College, we're one of the rare places that actually has your financial aid or merit scholarships travel with you. And we either give you a flight credit or stipend or pay for your flight outright. So literally attending a semester in one of our over 100 different partners around the world is virtually the same as being at Gettysburg College. So another question for you, Lindsey, as we begin to wrap up, is what are some of the things that families should consider when they're not just looking at the first year in financial aid, but also 4-year affordability of living a full experience at a college or university?
So that's a great question, especially in that when it comes to the need-based financial aid, that is looked at every single year and reevaluated every single year. So when you're looking at affordability, you want to make sure that you understand how your award may change if there is one less sibling in college, or if there's one more sibling in college. You're going to want to reach out to the schools that you're highly interested in, especially, I mean, it could even be after you've received your aid, and talk it over with your counselor. What does this mean for me in the next 4 years? How might this change? How might this thing be affected?
So thank you for that, Lindsey. So as we close, there are a couple of things I want you to do. First, communicate openly with each other as a family unit. Second, communicate openly with admissions and financial aid professionals. I know that there are so many temptations to pay for extra help to fill out financial aid forms, but really, the people that work at Gettysburg College will do it based on a phone call, email, video chat. You should never pay extra to try to get more financial aid. Second, understand that we know that this issue of financing college creates a lot of stress, but we are here to help you and we are accessible to help you. Again, if your questions are not answered, because we did have so many great questions, we will follow up with you and you can follow up with us using these email addresses. You've all been fantastic. Stay engaged with us. We're looking forward to reviewing your applications and also to helping you understand this tricky piece of financing higher education. Lindsey, thank you. You were fantastic.
Thank you,
It's been a
Darryl.
pleasure to be with all of you. Best of luck.